Jeanie Buss just threw a grenade into the Lakers' $12.5 billion sale. 5 family members voted to sell. She refused to recognize it. And now the Lakers could be heading straight into an all-out legal war.
So the Lakers sold completely to Bob Iger and Josh Kushner. Then, no, they didn't, actually, because the Buss family, of which there are 6, from my understanding, although they voted 5-1 in favor of selling the final 17.8% of the Los Angeles Lakers stake that they had, they announced that they sold it. Congratulations to us. We just sold this, and to Bob Iger and Kushner. And Shams Charania was the one that kind of announced that this deal got done, because I think all parties thought that deal got done. Then Jeanie Buss, who was the one in the 5-1, okay, says, oh, that's cute, because you guys aren't even allowed to do that. Like, I'm the only one really that matters here. I am the governor. I am the controlling owner. We have more than 15%, so I can still run the team. That is the reason why we are here. And all your votes are void if I say no. That's what our dad said in the trust whenever he left us the Lakers. Secession in real time, feels like.
Yep.
Joining us now, a man who has been quoted by a lawyer from the Jeanie Buss camp, and also the man who reported the 5-1 vote for the rest of the Busses to decide to sell the rest of the Lakers. Ladies and gentlemen, NBA senior insider for ESPN, Shams Charania.
Yeah, Shami.
But then came the bombshell nobody saw coming. What looked like a simple family vote could now explode into a legal war and potentially decide who actually controls the Lakers.
Look, when it's 5-0, she just didn't vote. She didn't respond to the vote because she's like, you don't have the authority to do this. I'm not even going to respond to say there is a vote here. I have the ultimate authority. And I think she's right as the trust stands, because there's the shares of the Buss family are in that trust. It's not like she has 3% and Jim has 3%, and it's owned collectively by the family trust. And she is the controlling owner of those shares. So people who deal in businesses understand what that means. Can't just, like, you can say we want to sell, but she doesn't have to, because she's the chairman of that board. She's the chairman of the board of directors of that trust. So, but the pressure on her to step aside is now exponential, especially after that 5-0 vote and the sale last week. She's kind of on an island now, and I think she may have the legal grounds, but that's hard to stay on that island with all the outside pressure that's on her.
Okay.
Is it the court order, or is it going to be the tag-along provision? And then we get into a discussion about, and this is a big old word here, okay? When you have a trust, you have fiduciary responsibilities, which is essentially you have an obligation to do what's best for the trust. So when we get to this fundamental question of what is best for the trust, is it best for the trust to sell at $12.5 billion, or is it best for the trust to maintain its shares at their current valuation with Jeanie as a controlling owner? And in which point they also had something at the end of the 5 years where she was controlling owner. They had a sort of guarantee that they could still get the same $10 billion valuation Mark Walter paid for their shares if they wanted to sell, or they could sell their shares for whatever it's worth in 5 years. So that whole big question of fiduciary responsibility, all of that, I think what happens next is her lawyer sent a nasty letter to their lawyers. Those lawyers are going to respond either to each other or by filing things in the court. So that's back to the original question. When Mark sold the team, Bob said in an interview with the California Post, Bob Iger said, we intend to honor that agreement between Jeanie and Mark, which was in writing. But if something changes, then it changes. So we're back to this original question, which we all were wondering, which is, if somebody pays $12 billion, are they really going to let someone else run the team? Right? Mark made that deal because he had to make the deal in order to get Jeanie to sell. But now Mark's selling. So will that hold up in court? And Bob Iger was my boss for a lot of years. I think he's a really good executive, Hall of Fame, legendary executive. Okay.
Indeed.
I feel like there was probably a graceful way to resolve this. And I assume he was already thinking through all of that to resolve it, whether in the short term, the long term, medium term, whatever it is. I think that was probably the desired outcome. Nobody likes these headlines. These are ugly headlines for the Lakers, for the NBA, for everyone. And the sooner the family resolves its drama, the sooner Bob and Josh can go start running the Lakers themselves. I think that's kind of the choreography of how it all went. And there was a family meeting. I think or Dave McMenamin, my colleague, reported that Joe McCormick had called this sort of family discussion on Monday night, late Monday night, to revise the trust for the next 4 years. It seemingly, if we look at it in retrospect, it seems like there was a sort of Jeanie Buss maybe revising the trust to solidify her agreement with Mark. One of the other siblings that I've sort of been in touch with said there was these huge tax liabilities. That part spooked them, said, why is she doing that? Why don't we just sell? It called into question what was going on. They had an open vote and called to sell Tuesday. Remember, Wednesday is when I had the story on Wednesday morning about Mark Walter sharing his shares, selling his shares. Mm-hmm. And so the timing suggests this sale has been knocking at the door for a long time. The families wanted to sell ever since they all weren't involved anymore. And Jeannie's been on this island for quite a long time, trying to keep everyone happy. And this was always a very difficult situation to manage. And it was set up that way by her father, and she'd managed it as long as she could. But now this feels like the end, one way or another.
5 Buss family members reportedly voted to sell. Jeanie Buss did not. And suddenly, what looked like a clean $12.5 billion Lakers ownership transition has turned into a potentially explosive legal battle. Bob Iger and Josh Kushner were expected to become the new controlling forces around the franchise after Mark Walter's sale. The Buss family was also expected to sell its remaining 17.8% stake. The vote appeared decisive. 5 against 0. But Jeannie's position was essentially, that vote doesn't give you the authority to sell. Why? Because the family's Lakers shares aren't simply divided up like 6 people each owning a separate percentage. They're held through a family trust, and Jeanie remains the controlling owner under that structure. So this isn't just a disagreement between siblings. It's a fight over who actually has the power to make the decision. And that's where this story gets much bigger than one family vote. The key issue is control. Jeanie isn't simply saying, I don't like the sale. Her argument is much more powerful. You may not have the legal authority to make this sale without me. The family trust reportedly gives Jeanie control over the shares. She is the controlling owner and chair of the trust's board. So even if 5 siblings want to sell, that doesn't automatically mean the transaction can be forced through. And that's why the 5-0 vote could become one of the most misleading numbers in this entire story. 5 people can agree. But if the trust requires the controlling trustee to approve the transaction, the vote may not be enough. That's the battle now. The siblings are looking at a massive opportunity to cash out at a $12.5 billion valuation. Jeanie is looking at the authority she believes her father left behind. And neither side appears willing to simply surrender. But there's another legal weapon sitting right in the middle of this dispute, and it could determine whether Jeanie can actually stop the sale. That weapon is fiduciary responsibility. If you control a trust, you're not supposed to make decisions purely for yourself. You have obligations to the beneficiaries. So lawyers could ultimately face one enormous question. What is best for the trust? Is it better to sell the family's remaining Lakers interest now, while the franchise is valued at an extraordinary $12.5 billion? Or is it better to keep the ownership structure intact and allow Jeanie to remain in control? That's where the previous agreement with Mark Walter becomes extremely important. The family had protections connected to the previous transaction, including a mechanism that could preserve a $10 billion valuation under certain circumstances during the 5-year period. So this isn't simply sell now or don't sell. It's potentially a battle over the family's long-term financial interests, control, and contractual rights. And that is exactly why this could end up in court. And if those lawyers can't settle this behind closed doors, the next stage could get very ugly. The likely next move? Lawyers. Jeannie's side could challenge the sale. The other side could defend the family vote and argue that the transaction should proceed. And if neither side backs down, a judge could ultimately be asked to interpret the trust and the agreements surrounding the Lakers. Think about the situation. Someone is paying around $12.5 billion for the Lakers. Would that buyer really accept a situation where someone else still has the power to run the franchise? That's the uncomfortable question hanging over Bob Iger and Josh Kushner. There was reportedly a written agreement between Jeanie Buss and Mark Walter concerning control. Bob Iger had indicated that he intended to honor that agreement. But Mark Walter is now selling. And when ownership changes hands, the question becomes, does that agreement still have the same force? If the answer is yes, Jeanie could retain significant influence. If the answer is no, the new owners may be preparing to take full control. And the timing of everything makes this even more suspicious. Before the sale vote, there was reportedly a family meeting. Joe McCormick reportedly called a discussion late Monday to consider changes to the trust for the next 4 years. Then came the vote. The family chose to sell. And shortly afterward, the news broke that Mark Walter was selling his shares. That timing raises a massive question. Was the family already preparing for the end of the Buss era? Some siblings reportedly had concerns about the tax consequences involved with changing the trust. Others apparently questioned why changes were necessary at all. Why revise the trust when they could simply sell? That disagreement may have pushed the family toward the 5-0 vote. And suddenly, the bigger picture becomes clear. The family had apparently been struggling with ownership for years. Jeanie was trying to maintain control. Her siblings wanted a different path. And Mark Walter's sale may have finally forced everyone to make a decision. Which brings us to the emotional side of this battle, because this isn't just about billions of dollars. It's about the legacy of Jeanie Buss. Jeanie Buss bought the Lakers in 1979. For decades, the Buss name became synonymous with Lakers basketball. Championships, superstars, Hollywood, and one of the most powerful sports franchises on earth. Jeanie Buss inherited the responsibility of protecting that legacy. She survived years of family conflict and remained the face of Lakers ownership. But now, that entire structure could be collapsing. If the reported 17.8% sale goes through, the Buss family could lose its remaining ownership connection to the Lakers. And Jeanie could be fighting the final battle to preserve the authority she inherited from her father. Her siblings may see this differently. They may believe the time has come to cash out and move forward. Jeanie may believe the trust gives her the responsibility and the authority to prevent that. That's why this fight is so personal. Because whoever wins isn't simply determining who gets paid. They're determining how the Buss family's Laker story ends. And now the entire situation comes down to one brutal question. Is this a family sale? A trust dispute? A contractual battle? Or the beginning of a full-scale legal war? The numbers make this extraordinary. $12.5 billion valuation, 17.8% stake, 5 family members voting to sell, 1 refusing to recognize the vote, and potentially 47 years of Buss family ownership coming to an end. Jeanie Buss may have legal grounds to stand where she is, but that doesn't mean the fight will be easy. She's facing enormous pressure from her own family, the incoming ownership group, and the reality that the Lakers are simply too valuable for this dispute to remain quiet. And that's why the next move matters so much. If the lawyers settle it, the transition could happen quietly. If they don't, courtroom doors could open. And the next battle for the Lakers won't be fought with basketballs. It will be fought with contracts, trusts, lawyers, and billions of dollars. Because 5 family members may believe the Lakers have already been sold. Jeanie Buss appears to be saying something very different. Not without me. And that is exactly why the Lakers' $12.5 billion ownership story may have only just begun.
Yo, mic check 1 to 2, -1, -2. Game over for this video, folks. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to stay in the huddle for more. This is NFL Madness, bringing the heat and signing out.